Good evening. This is the regular Netivot Shalom Shir, and we're going to talk about one part of the parsha. This week we have two parshot. We have Behar and Bechukosai, finishing up the book of Vayikra, the Sefer Vayikra. And it's appropriate that I chose this particular part of the parsha. It's called the Inyan Shmittah, or it's the thing talking about the Shmittah year every 7 years. Why is that important? Because this year, starting in September, is a Shmittah year. So it'd be good to try to remember some of the lessons that we learn about Shmittah from what the Netivot Shalom says about it. And basically, what he is talking about is he's talking about Shmittah being the true manifestation of Emunah in Hashem, the true belief in Hashem. And we'll get through that, and we'll talk about that. All right, let me. Okay, so the parsha starts at the very beginning of the parsha. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe Bar Sinai Lemor. Hashem spoke to Moshe and Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, saying, "Daber Bnei Yisrael Martu Aleim, speak to the Bnei Yisrael, say to them, Ki tavo el haaretz, when you come into the land, Asher ani nosen lachem, that I'm giving to you, v'shav haaretz Shabbos Hashem, the earth shall rest, a Shabbos to Hashem." Rashi says, asks the question, Ma inyan Shmittah etzel Har Sinai? What does Shmittah have to do with Mount Sinai, with Har Sinai? Fallow kol hamitzvos nemru miSinai. All of the commandments were said at Sinai. Why is the Torah singling out this particular one, saying Har Sinai, Lamor? It says, Ma elama Shmittah nemru chalolis v'proteseha v'ditukeha miSinai, comes to teach us that even though that just as all the specific generalities, the generalities, the specifics of the laws of Shmittah are given at Har Sinai. And if you look in the Chumash, it devotes some time to telling what you have to do with Shmittah. So since this is given, shows that this was also given. He says, "Af kula nemru chlosayim v'ditukeha miSinai." Every mitzvah, the specifics of it, the general. You have a general mitzvah, and you have the things you can learn from that mitzvah, the pratim, the application of that thing on a more personal level. So all those were learned on every mitzvah at Sinai. So Torah's Kanim. That's what we learn in the Torah's Kanim. And he says, V'nir, I'm sorry. It appears to me, Shekach Perusha, this is what it means. The fi shalom atzinu, Shmitas karkos, shenashnis be'arvos moav Mishnah Torah. We don't find the concept of Shmittah in the book of Devorim, in the Parsha of Ki Tavo, when it's giving all the laws at Arvat Moab. You don't have Shmittah mentioned there. It says, Lamadu, to teach us, Sheklaloseh, Paratoseh, Kulam, Nemru Misai, teach us that everything, all the principles of every law and every the specifics of it were given at Sinai. Uva Kosov, and the Torah comes to Velama, teaches us Khan here. I'll call Dibur on every word. Shnedaber Lemoshe Shemesino Kulam Philosev Dakteim. Every word that Moshe gave over of Torah in this part at Har Sinai. He gave all the particulars of every particular mitzvah. And it was repeated and repeated at Armas Moab in the parts of Kitovel. 1 second. So Adkan, he says, "V'yakati tzorach bir, ma harem is binyan Shmittah etzel Har Sinai." So he says, okay, what do we learn? What is hinted at by the concept of Shmittah given, talking about being given at Har Sinai? Before I go any further, I want to dedicate this year to the memory of my mother, Davidovich Shalom, Rachma Bas Nasanata, whose yahrzeit is tonight and tomorrow. So, Vakati Tzarch Bir Ma Haremez Binyan Shmittah Etzel Har Sinai. What does this have to do with Har Sinai? The Kamuka Kashim Haya Efshar Lilmo Zot. We could have learned this Aide Mitzvah Acheres. We could have learned this from another mitzvah. Any mitzvah you could have chosen, Shia Katuba Har Sinai, that was, you could have said was written in Har Sinai. Below Tia Shinuya Mishnah Torah, it wouldn't even have to be repeated in Sefer Devorim. But we met on Nilmad Binyan Av Al Kala Mitzvos, and you learn from one. This is a Binyan Av is a way of explaining sentences of the Torah. How one sentence can lead to other, one generality can lead to other specific practicalities. So Shnever Chalasei, Dr. Kim said, you could have done that with any mitzvah, and then learned that for all the mitzvahs, that they all come from Sinai. So he says, why does the Torah specifically pick the commandment of Shmittah to tie it in together with Har Sinai? So we have to understand the uniqueness of the mitzvah of Shmittah. As it says, betochacha in the curses, Parshat Behar, the second parsha this week, it says, "V'hoisa artzachem shemama," your lands will be destroyed. Arechub yirachava, your cities will be harva, destruction. Oz tirtza aretz. This is how the earth will reclaim, so to speak, eshab soseha, all of the sabbatical years, kol yemei hashama, all the days of destruction will recall the shmitot that were not observed. For many shmitot were not observed. Because of that, you'll have all this destruction on your land. B'tocha nichtavu rak chataim kalalim, lo chataim pratim. In the tochacha, in the curses in this week's parsha B'chokosai, you only have general sins that are mentioned, but not the specific ones. Acheta prati hayachid, the unique sin of an individual, shenichtavu achet shelo shomer shmita. Unique sin of the individual is that he didn't keep Shmittah. It's incumbent upon all of us to keep Shmittah, whether we're a farmer or we're not a farmer. Because of this, by not keeping it, your cities are destroyed. As it says in Avos Perik Hey, Golus Bal Olam. What does exile come from? He says, Golus comes from four things: Avodah Zarah, idol worship; Gili Arroyos, immorality; Shvichas Damim, murder; Ushmitas Haaretz, and failing to keep the Shmittah. That brings about galus, brings about exile. So Netivot Shalom says, "B'shloma al avodah zarah, gilei arroz, b'shvichas damim." Move on. I understand idol worship, idolatry, murder. That's understandable. Shabbatim ba galus shem gimel averos chachaboros biyoter. because it's understandable how exile can come from these three things, which are the most stringent of the sins that you could do, should deed him, because on these three things, Gili Arroyos, immorality, Avodah Zorah, and Shmichas Damim, immorality, murder, and idol worship. Those are things that if somebody tells you to bow down to an idol, those are things that, or to kill somebody else, or to commit an immoral act. Those are things that the Torah gives you the permission to be killed yourself instead of violating the law of the Torah. Fine. Those three you can understand. They're really severe things. There's nowhere that it's commanded where it's told that if you don't, that you should be Bal Yaharo Bal Yavor, you should be killed rather than not transgressing the mitzvah of Shemitah. Nowhere does it say that. So how do you put Shemitah in that same category? That this is one of the four ways, according to, it says in Amos, that Galus comes upon the Jewish people. We were up here on Chazal, and we can explain this based on what Chazal tell us. Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. Sheyesh Makshim B'mashmot Kibel Torah Sinai. You can ask a question: why does it say Moshe received the Torah from Sinai? So Tzorech Lomer should have said Moshe Kibel Torah from where? Moshe received the Torah from Hashem. Yesh Lomer Dekoi Al Mamad Har Sinai. So we can say that this has to do with standing at Har Sinai. Shohayu Hakdama LaKabbalas Torah. Standing at Har Sinai was the beginning, the foretaste of receiving the Torah. The whole basis of all the Torah and all the mitzvos is the aspect of Emunah, of faith in Hashem. These were the first of the 10 commandments, the 10 utterances. I don't like to call them 10 commandments because there's 613 commandments, but we have the 10 utterances, the Aseres HaDibros. Shenemro Yisrael, that are told to Israel. What's the first one? Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am the Lord your God. Rambam, Reish Minyan Mitzvos. Rambam, in his enumeration of the mitzvos, he writes, Mitzvos Anochi Hashem Elokecha, the commandment, I am the Lord your God, he mitzvos emunas Hashem. That's the mitzvah of emunah Hashem. But by believing that there is a God and that he is our God, not that he's some distant God. That's emunah Hashem. That God exists and he's my God. He's my God. He's not off somewhere and he's involved in every aspect of my life. The preparation for receiving the Torah was at Mount Sinai. Because at Mount Sinai, we had the most clear, the greatest revelations, which clarified Emunah. Komer HaKosev, as the Pasuk says, Ato hareso ladas, you will come to know Ki Hashem hu Elokim, that God is Lord. Ein od milvado, is nothing else, nobody else besides God. There's not multiple gods, no idol controls or anything, no natural body is anything like God. Sheniftahu at Har Sinai, Sheniftahu kol shivas harakayim. All 7 firmaments opened up. things that we cannot see with our own eyes. We're all on call, and everybody saw that there is nothing but God. And the Torah goes on to tell us that at the revelation at Sinai, the people were trembling. All the people were trembling in the camp. The light, the bright light of Emunah was so strong that their souls left them. This is, we explain the aspect of Emunah. There's three kinds of Emunah he's going to say. We've talked about this many times before. There's an Emunah of the mind. Shemavin the seichlo, that you understand makes sense. Emunah Hashem, to have belief in Hashem, because with your mind you can see, just like there's a painting on the wall, there's got to be an artist. So we have this world that's created. Obviously, there's an artist who created it. So that's Emunah Sheba Seichel, Emunah Sheba Moach. And the second kind of Emunah, Yesh Emunah Halev, is Emunah of the heart. Shagam Belipo Margish Emunah. In your heart, you feel, you have the emotion of Emunah. You not only know it intellectually, but you feel it emotionally. So it's becoming, you can see how it's becoming part of your body, starting from the mind on down. But then it says, Ach, Ivorav, Adayin Eina Margishim Emunah. If you have only this Emunah of the Moach, intellectual Emunah, or the emotional Emunah, Emunah Shebelev, you still have not really witnessed Emunah until your very limbs feel the Emunah. Ulamala Mehem, and above all this is Bechinas Emunah Hevorim, the Emunah of your limbs, your blood vessels, your muscles, your every part of your body. Because Emunah Hevorim Shleimus Emunah. With the Emunah of the Evorim, that's the perfection of Emunah. Shigam Evorov, because even your very limbs, Maminim, believe, the Chadorim, the Behiros Emunah, and you're infused with the clarity of Emunah. Ubechinas, the aspect of Kol Atzmosai Tomarno Hashem. All of my limbs are singing your praise, O God. Michamocha, who is like you? Shafar Evorim, your very limbs, your very bodily parts, Margishim, they themselves feel Ki ein od milvado, that there's nothing but Hashem. Shizehu si hamadregos Emunah, that is the highest level of Emunah that you can reach. Emunah of the Evorim, of the limbs. Ubechinas zu shel Emunah Evorim, and with this aspect of reaching the highest level of Emunah, of your very limbs having Emunah, feeling the Emunah, and that aspect, Torah, that was the preparation that needed to be taken at Har Sinai in order to receive the Torah. Therefore, all the people trembled in the camp because they could feel, they had this emotional feeling of what was going on. Chazal tell us in Gemara Brachas, the Torah was given with fear, awe, wonderment, and trembling. Shekol zehi migodel hagilui shel behiros hamuna. All these emotional feelings came from the revelation of the clarity of Emunah and Hashem. Shigam Avrehem Ro, your bottom parts saw the Kiru and recognize he ain't Od Milvado, there's nobody like Hashem. Zero Perish Moshe Kibul Torah Sinai. That's what it means. Moshe received the Torah at Sinai. Shakavana Abachina Zu Shel Emunas Ha'evorim Shoysu Mamad Har Sinai. It talks about the intent of it is to connect to the Emunah of the limbs that we saw at Har Sinai, Mount Sinai. Umoshu Asher Hamshich Inyan Zeh. Moshe, when he continued this, Kasher Yehudi Nigash Lilmod Torah, when a Jew studies Torah, O L'Kayim Mitzvah, or if a Jew is doing a mitzvah, fulfilling one of the commandments, Tzorech Sheyeh B'Behiros Hamunah, you have to do it with clarity of Emunah, clarity of belief and trust in God. Achugam Evorev Yu Hadorim B'Or Hamunah. So much so that your limbs become totally infused, totally enmeshed, immersed with the light of Emunah. Aldas Shohayu B'Mamad Haniskav Shel Har Sinai. That it's on the level of reaching that high level at Mount Sinai. All the people that were in the camp were trembling. Then he goes on to say, their souls left their bodies because of this revelation. In fact, the Midrash says that the angels came and revived the Jewish people because when they heard the first sound of Anochi, they lost it. The neshamas left them. The angels came and revived them. Because Chazal, when Chazal tell us, Shlimud HaTorah Tzorech Sheyeh Be'emu V'yer Beretah V'ziyah. When you're studying Torah, it should be the same way, with awe, reverence, fear, trembling. Hadash Sheyeh B'Har Sinai, just like Shoyeh B'Har Sinai, just like it was in Har Sinai. Shoyasim Madregas Behiros Hamunah, the highest level of Emunah. Emunah Ha'evorim Asher Zeh Shorish L'Chol Mitzvah, is the Emunah of the limbs, which then becomes the root of every mitzvah. Because you may think about doing a mitzvah, and you may really want to do the mitzvah. So those two things can be compared to emunahs of the moach. You're thinking about it, the emunah of the head, the brain, and you mostly want to do it. That's emunah shebalev. But how do you perform the mitzvah? You perform the mitzvah with your body. You pick up something that's a mitzvah. You light the Shabbos candles with your hands. You're doing it with your avorim. That's the shoresh. That's the root of the mitzvah. It's written in Tillim. Kol mitzvosecha amuna. All of your mitzvahs are amuna. Nishmas kol Torah v'chol mitzvos hi amuna. The soul of the whole Torah and all the mitzvos is amuna. Hashoresh haklali shel kol mitzvos hu inyan amuna. It's the root of all the mitzvos. Muvad zeh yesh l'chol mitzvah inyan prati. Nonetheless, every mitzvah has a specific individual component of it. One particular thing that you accomplish by doing this mitzvah. He gives some examples, I think. Saying that all of the generalities and the specifics were said at Har Sinai. Emunah, the general concept of Emunah, Chosem mitzvah, mitzvos, general concept of mitzvos. Proteim, emonyanim hasgulim yuchadim b'chol mitzvah. The pratim, this more specific individual component of a mitzvah, are those things that are connected to a particular mitzvah. To recognize, v'nemru misena, it was said at Sinai. Shigilu Emunah shoy Bahar Sinai yishoresh kol mitzvah kolos yom vartosem shkol mitzvos Emunah. Repeats. Ach yucheres mitzvah Shmittah, but the mitzvah, the uniqueness of the mitzvah of Shmittah, shehi hasi madrega Emunah. Mitzvah of Shmittah is on the highest level of Emunah. It's on the same level in comparison to the three levels of Emunah we just talked about. It's on the level of Emunah of the Evorim, of all the bodily parts. Why? Asher Yehudi note shana shlema esadehu. A Jew abandons for an entire year his field. Makor mechiyaso, the place from which he draws his living. Mimenu call parnasa beso. From that field, all the parnasa comes to his house, and he's not working it. He's leaving it alone the entire year. Then oveba, and he doesn't work it. Even though he doesn't know from where he's going to eat. All of this comes about, the ability to observe Shmittah comes about from the clarity of Emunah and the trusting in that Hashem will provide what you need. Chomer HaKosev, as David Melech said in Tehillim, Gibore Koach Osud Dvoro. People of strength do their words, do what they say. Shidarshu Chazal interpret that as saying, Agoldam Alasum Shal Shomrei Shavis. The great merit of those who keep Shmittah, Shkai Mitzvah Zu, by fulfilling this Mitzvah Shmittah, Mora al Hamuna Behira Kol Kacha Megat Ad La'ivorim. It teaches us the level of Emunah, the clarity of Emunah that has to come to all of the bodily parts. Shekol Klal Yisrael Soneach Es Bekor Mechiyas. Place from where everybody draws his sustenance. Shazam Mora al Dargas Emunah Hagvoa B'yoter. And this is reference to the highest Emunah. Shemuna Makapes Makafat et called Kumat Adam V'chadura Af Bevarim. Emunah encompasses, is like a circle surrounding, like a bubble surrounding every person. And the Emunah causes a trembling even of your limbs. This is the generalities and specifics of the mitzvah of Shmittah. Shekal in Yani Morim Abahirus Emunah. All of it talks about Emunah. Mitzvah Shabbos, who Yesod Emunah. Likewise, the mitzvah of Shabbos is the foundation of Emunah. Why? 6 days God made the heaven and the earth. Ach Shabbos, Shaychid Yoter le'emunas hamoach v'alev. Shabbos is more connected to Emunah of the mind and the heart. But the highest level of the mitzvah of Shmittah, where the power of Emunah resides within your body from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. Where it says, the earth shall observe a Shabbos to God. It refers to a lower level. Or Hamuna Shabbos Lashem. Because your limbs light up with the light of Emunah, and you allow the rest for a Shabbos to Hashem, a rest of the land for Shabbos of Hashem. Zero perish Mashem Shemata Nemru Mashmita Nemru Kolosem for Sinai. This is why it's said at Sinai. Shulakach Nivharu Shmittah was chosen. Lilbo al Kol mitzvahs to teach from Shmittah all the other mitzvahs. Mishum Shekol Ma'usur Shel Mitzvah, because of any mitzvah, Shmittah hu Emunah. Shmittah, the whole mitzvah of Shmittah that we're observing for the entire year, that is the high level of Emunah. And just put yourself in the shoes of the farmer who really doesn't know where he's going to get his food from, can't use his land. How's he going to feed his family? That's real Emunah. How's he going to make an income? How's he going to be able to do the things he needs to feed his family? Yet, if nonetheless he observes the laws of Shmittah, that's the highest level of Emunah. You have Emunah under fire. You're not just talking about it. Everybody says, yeah, I've got Emunah. But when it comes down to it, do you really have that Emunah to withstand that kind of a situation? Because Emunah lights up, reveals itself through your limbs, the aspect of Har Sinai. Milmo, to teach us. Shekol makom. I'm sorry. Moshe Koso. Call him. This was Nemro Cholaseim from Sinai. All everything was said at Sinai. Shigam b'chol mitzvos ikro v'nishmason hi Emunah. We see that the mitzvot are the most important part of the mitzvah, the ikar of the mitzvah, the neshama of the mitzvah, the thing that keeps the mitzvah, that allows you to do the mitzvah, the neshama of the mitzvah is Emunah. Shaydei maseh mitzvah yachtir Emunah bekirbo. By doing the mitzvah, you infuse Emunah in your midst, b'chinas Emunah sveivorim, and the aspect of Emunah of the limbs. Shekol mitzvosecha Emunah, all of your mitzvahs shall be Emunah. K'shehudi maniach tefillin, for example, a Jew puts on tefillin, Okovei mezuzah, the pichor, he puts up a mezuzah on his doorpost. Oh, she'osa maka legago, or he puts a fence on his roof to keep people from falling off. Through this, he has established Emunah through his intellect, his heart, and his limbs. Nishmas called Torah mitzvos. This is the neshama of all Torah and mitzvos. Lahachtir Yisrael shleimus Emunah, to infuse Bnei Yisrael with the completeness of Emunah, ad Emunah sveivorim, up until the Emunah of the Evorim, of the limbs. Ubechinas v'yechra kol asher b'machta. The aspect of all of the people trembled in the camp. I'm going to skip it. It's getting too late, so I'm going to skip to the last paragraph, and the page, it's on the page already. Let me just see. Actually, it's the bottom of this paragraph. Moshe HaKodesh Mirusim. He told the following parable. Inyan Zeh, L'machnis orchim shoyu v'parnesu machil kol habab b'chitzaso. He's telling a parable of a person who welcomes any guests that want to come in and gives them parnasa and gives them food. Everybody that comes into his house, into his courtyard, into his palace. And one poor man heard about this place where you get parnasa and free food. He was really hungry, this poor man. So he went there. But Uvadarko Nichnas Patos, he made a mistake. He didn't have ways, and he went by mistake. Leveis Shchono. He went to a neighboring house. Who was his neighbor? So Ish Ra Mali Mavikash Meno Shiachlu, a very evil person. And he asked this person that he could have some food. He said he wants food. And this wicked person said to him, in order to receive food, you've got to work. And that's what he did. The Perach called Yom Tamurasoch. He worked very hard every day for food. Uvasof Hayom, at the end of the day, Kishitavu Manaso, when he asked for his portion of his wages, Shocholoso Machni Sorchim, the wicked man sent him to the other house. Says, go to this guy. He gives everybody parnasa. So the guy did all this work for nothing. He sends him away to the other house. That's the mushal that he gives. What he's trying to tell us, parnasav shel adam bolam hazeh. The parnas that you have, that you make in this world, it really doesn't, it's not dependent on what you do. You might think what your actions bring you parnasa. I don't remember who it was. Maybe Chofetz Chaim, maybe somebody else saw somebody running, and he says, "Where are you running to?" He says, "I'm running to my parnasa." He says, "What? Maybe your parnasa is behind you." So he's saying, it doesn't matter what you do. Whether you're working for it or not. You always have enough parnasa from Hashem. I always say that Hashem gives us what we need. Doesn't always give us what we want, but he gives us what we need. And all the whole reason we have to work so hard for parnasa is because of the sin of Adam Harishon. And it says where Hashem tells him, from the sweat of your brow you will eat bread. Now you're going to have to work for your parnasa. And this is the aspect of Shmittah, the mitzvah of Shmittah. You believe with the clarity of the Emunah in your limbs. Your parnasa does not depend on your field that you have out there you're working so hard on. That is not where your parnasa comes from. It is promised from Hashem. Whether he works it or not. Because of this Emunah, the Shmittah year, Mafkid Sadehu, Mafkir. He makes his sada, his field, ownerless and unharvested, untilled the entire year, because this is the mitzvah of Hashem. And he knows, the clarity of the Emunah is to know that when you do the mitzvah of Hashem, you should not do it for a reward, but you will know that, as we've talked about in the past, the very act of your doing the mitzvah brings about the reward. Similar to the example I gave about dropping something down. Gravity makes it fall. It doesn't matter what you do. You put it in motion, that's what's going to happen. You put in motion the doing of the mitzvah, the shefa is going to come down to our open hands from Hashem. Thank you for listening, and I wish everybody a wonderful rest of the week. We had a terrible tragedy befall us last week, and this tragedy should bring us all together, bring us to a period of learning to love one another, not to hate one another, and to look out for one another, and not to judge one another. I wish everybody all the best. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Nate.
You are welcome. You're welcome.